The pounding on my front door rattled the whole house. "Open up!" a voice shrieked, sharp enough to slice through sleep and small talk both. I opened it, and there she stood, perfectly coiffed heels clicking, two officers watching like stagehands. Karen pointed her finger at my backyard and shouted, "He drained the pool!" The street went quiet. Cameras that had been hidden in pockets lifted like a flock of birds. And for a second, everything looked like the kind of bad movie you can't stop watching. My name is Josh, and I have a backyard with a pool and a stubborn streak. Not a revolutionary streak, just a man who wanted a cool place for his kids and a cooler place to breathe in August. That pool was mine. Mortgage, deed, tax bill, all in order. But in Maple Ridge, ownership is a messy thing when terror wears a pearl necklace and calls itself the Homeowners Association. At first I played the neighborly game, paid dues, clipped my hedges, said, "Nice weather" at the proper decibel. Karen ran the HOA like a kingdom. She didn't ask, she decreed. Mailbox, paint grass length, how late you could hang a flag, every inch of private life assessed and annotated in a ledger she treated like scripture. And when she set her eyes on my pool, she wasn't admiring a backyard amenity. She was seeing a stage. She walked into my yard one Tuesday like she owned the place, clipboard sunglasses, the kind of smile that sits on a face to mask a knife. "This pool is perfect for our gala," she said, all syrup and threat. "July 16th. You'll cooperate." I told her no. She tapped her pen and said, "Expect an inspection." The first notice landed like a pebble, and then another, and then a rain of them mailbox paint. Non-compliant lawn, too tall, the bird bath my daughter gave me suddenly illegal. Every notice came wrapped in the same inked, calm compliance or consequence. The whispers started as echoes. Neighbors stopped waving. Mrs. Dawson, who'd always smiled, began to look the other way. A few well-placed inspections, fake inspectors with photocopied IDs, and suddenly my yard was a dossier. Mr. Jenkins, who'd lived 3 doors down, longer than the pavement had set, pulled me aside one night and said, "Careful, son, she runs folks out. The Millers, the Garcays, they resisted and they left." He slid me a folded business card of an old college buddy who'd gone into paralegal work and said quietly, "Keep records." So I started to keep records. Photos, timestamps, receipts, videos. I went from defense to reconnaissance, night cameras, voice recorders, a notebook that filled with dates and small betrayals. One night at 2:13 a.m., the camera caught her climbing the fence, measuring the gate, planting a broken lock like a prop. I printed the stills, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like clarity. The neighborhood wasn't falling apart because of rules. It was being shaped by someone else's appetite. Karen doubled down. She hired contractors to prep my yard. They marched in with toolboxes and measured the pool like it was theirs. When I yelled, one flashed a forged authorization and the other muttered threats. The Glory Act was her announcement to the whole community, a meeting where she unfurled a poster with my pool in the center, declared revised bylaws, and named July 16th the date. People clapped some just to fill the silence. I stood up, demanded proof, and she glared like she'd never been contradicted before. That's when I made a choice. Defense wasn't enough. Documentation needed a destination. I pulled that old card from Mr. Jenkins and called Mark, a college friend turned paralegal. Mark didn't ask idiotic questions. He said, "Send it all." He scanned everything into a cleaner set of papers. I hired a county inspector named Daniels, a calm, plain-speaking guy who walked the yard, measured the deed, and said, "This pool is private. The HOA has no jurisdiction." Legally, Karen had been building castles out of forged sand. But the law moves slow and spectacle moves fast. Karen knew that. Her power didn't come from judges, it came from the stage. She set vendors on my curb boxes of decorations at my mailbox, flyers taped to lamp posts with a glossy picture of my backyard, and smiling neighbors that looked photoshopped into place. She was trying to make the neighborhood accept a lie by making it look real. So I took the stage away. At midnight before the gala, while the neighborhood slept under a confetti of balloons already tied to mailboxes, I walked into my backyard and turned the drain valve. At first it felt like sacrilege, a man emptying his own pool, but it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The water hissed, gurgled, and ran away into the storm drain. With every inch that fell, the pressure to comply lifted off my chest. When the sun rose, the centerpiece was gone, a blue crater under the screaming sky. The reaction was huge, in the small way that small towns are huge. Karen marched in theatrical and furious, pointing fingers and calling me selfish. She tried to spin it as vandalism, as the ruin of community spirit, but then she made the mistake that breaks tyrants. She revealed herself. In a fit of performance, she said loud enough for witnesses, "I rewrote the bylaws myself." It landed like a dropped plate. I had the recording. Mark had the folder. The police who'd been ushered in by public complaints had to listen. Forgery is a crime that isn't opinion. It's a fact with a statute number. With stacks of notices. People who'd been with stacks of notices. People who'd been isolated by fear found one another again. The county inspector's report next to my security footage became an ugly, undeniable mosaic of a scheme, forged bylaws, staged inspections, fake fines designed to make life unbearable until people sold and left. Court felt strange and quiet, public but not performative. Witnesses testified with the kind of weary courage that gets forged in late-night conversations and signed affidavits. Mrs. Rodriguez held up unpaid notices and said, "We saved for 15 years to buy our home." Mr. Patel talked about choosing between his child's medicine and fines. The judge listened, flipping through deeds and inspection reports, watching the video of Karen tiptoeing across my yard. The gavel finally landed: fraud, harassment, extortion. The HOA's threats nullified. Restitution ordered. Karen banned from ever holding office again. The victory was cleaner than I imagined and messier than I wanted. The courthouse steps were full of cameras and neighbors came up hugging me, crying, thanking me. 2 weeks later, the yard that had been a battlefield turned into a kind of clearing. We had a barbecue, not Karen's gala, but ours. Food passed hand to hand, kids turning the empty pool into a playground, laughter finding its old lines. Someone suggested I run for HOA president, and I almost laughed. Trading one boss for another wasn't the point. The point was that no one person should be allowed to rule a neighborhood by fear. There's a hard lesson tucked in all this, and it doesn't sound heroic. Power feeds on fear more than on law. If nobody speaks, statutes don't matter. A clipboard will look like a seal. It took evidence, persistence, a paralegal friend who believed the little guy, and a county inspector who would walk a yard and say what's true. It took neighbors deciding to stop looking away. The law was the weapon that finished it, but the thing that started it was people saying quietly, "Not like this." Would I have done anything differently? Maybe I'd have started sooner. Maybe I wouldn't have let the whispering isolation cut so deep. But I will tell you what I did learn sometimes. The only option that actually saves you is the one that looks like defiance. Draining that pool wasn't petty. It was the only way to take away the spectacle Karen used to scare the neighborhood into silence. It was a line in the sand. So here's the meat of it. The question I want you to wrestle with when someone uses rules as a weapon. Where do you draw the line between standing up and being stubborn? Is draining a pool an act of vandalism or an act of reclaiming ownership? Did justice taste like mercy or like revenge? I'm asking because my victory wasn't neat. It left scars, paperwork, and neighbors who had to relearn trust. If this sparked anything in you, anger, relief, the urge to tell your own story, drop a comment. Tell me if you'd call the cops or call a lawyer or roll out a hose at midnight. Tell me if you've ever been cornered by someone who thought they owned more than they bought. Share your experience because your voice might be the one that makes someone else stop looking away. If you liked hearing this one, hit like, subscribe, and tell me who in your life would you stand up for and who would you hope stands up for you.